So welcome everybody to Phil Rider's Diaries, and I want to tell you about 1997, because 1997 was a very good year. It was cool. Britannia had new government, the Spice Girls were spicing up your life in more ways than one, and J.K. Rowling had just released a book called The Philosopher's Stone that turned into the Harry Potter series. But none of that really meant anything to me, not really, because back in 1997, somewhere in the unfashionable backwaters of Thames Estuary, Essex, I was buying this. And that's my VFR750. Now, I very rarely do walk around videos. I don't always see the point in them. But since buying this, I've done a couple of modifications to it. So most notably, down here, you got the 4-pot calipers off the Firestorm. And that takes away one of the big criticism about this bike, which was its 2-pot brakes, and that was a very worthwhile addition. The Scorpion can, I've had that for about 15 years now, becoming like hen's teeth. The top box is actually a hinged seat hump, which gives me a little bit of storage space just for things like this camera. Hot grips, we know about. Remote control for the drift. Some cute Chinese ball ramp for another camera. 12-volt socket. And chop socket camera. And those are the mods that I've made to it. Oh, and one more thing. It's just running at 104,000 miles. So, that's what 20 years use does for you. And what we need is that. Yeah, we like that. We like that a lot. Let's go for a little spin. So what's the first thing you do when you get a new bike? Well, you take the next day off work, you go out and give it a bloody good hiding. And that's exactly what I did. The next day was beautiful, dry, warm, sunny. I went out for a ride to Clacton along the A12. Mid-morning, no traffic, and everything was right in the world. The arresting officer was very good to me. He gave me the usual 20-second spiel about, have you seen our road safety commercials? Fined me 60 quid and gave me 3 points. But he averaged me out over 5 miles at 98.6 miles an hour. Now, 3 figures at that time meant an instant 6-month ban, and yeah, he was a good guy. Gatso cameras don't do that. I did ask him what he saw me at, and he said at one point, "So I saw you at 130." Well, that kind of was a shot across the bows right there. Told me to rein it in a little bit, and if I didn't watch myself, I was going to lose my licence fairly damn quick. But that was it, that was my starter for 10. And from there, this bike just grew and grew on me. It had a job to do. I took it in and out of London for 12 years. Racked up something like 91,000 miles, I think. All in and out of London. Start, stop, brake, accelerated, gear change up, gear change down. The wear and tear that was going through this bike at that time was considerable, I can tell you. And it never got off entirely lightly, whether it was involved in 5 accidents in the end. 2 white van men just swiped me sideways. 2 people did U-turns in front of me, and one guy, God bless him, didn't want to sit in traffic any longer at the back of a cab, so he just got out while I was filtering, and I effectively drove into the back of his cab. I also dropped it on black ice once, dropped it at a junction once. It'd been stolen, recovered. This bike isn't actually worth anything to anybody else except me. And maybe that's why when I came to decide to go travelling in 2005, and I happily sold everything. And by everything, I mean I sold the house, I sold the car, I sold everything that was inside the house. I liquidised down my life to fit into a backpack. But there were a couple of things I couldn't sell. One was a guitar, oh well, and one was this motorbike. So naturally, when I finished the travelling, this had to be recommissioned. 8 years this has stood for. 8 years in a very good friend's garage. I told him I was only going to go for about a year, 18 months, turned out to be 5.5. But by the time I re-established myself back up in the lakes, 8 years had passed. And I managed to get this up to Cumbria, had a good look at it. Didn't start first of all, no, it took about 5 minutes. Put some fresh fuel in it, put up a new battery, turned it over, and yeah, it fired up on something like the 5th push of the starter. It pushed fuel all over the place because the carbs are blocked, but it started. And that was it. It was a rejuvenation. So it wasn't only serving a purpose anymore, just as a workhorse in and out of London, but now it had a second lease of life as a toy. And that's exactly what it's been used for ever since. And that's really how these videos started. It was just something to give me an extra inclination to get out on the bike and tell you guys about this and what it's like up here. And then of course the touring started. Now I've toured on this before, back in 1998. I'd only had the bike about 6 months, and myself and a friend of mine went to Le Mans, which was an arduous task because it was snowing in London 4 days before we left, and I didn't really know what to expect. And sure enough, it poured with rain the whole way down there, but the racing was good. And on the return journey, the weather was pretty much like this, and it gave me an idea of another community, another lifestyle that could be had with this bike. So of course, when the bike was recommissioned, one of the first things I wanted to do was take it abroad again. And so it's been to France, it's been to Germany, I've done a couple of little forays into Scotland, and let's see where it goes from here. But yeah, 20 years with the same motorbike. And you think to yourself, wow.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.